So the Bulls continue to be something this year. They've lost 3 in a row. Tough loss to the Celtics last night. Had a chance late. Jason Tatum hit a wild 3 and whatever else. But I mainly want to talk about Wendell Carter Jr. because I think he's been pretty good this season. I don't think he's been great. There are certainly things that he needs to improve on, but for a guy who was selected and was viewed as a pretty safe pick because of his defense and just smarts all around, I think he's having the second season that you would want. I mean, his first year, it was tough to tell a lot with him because he played basically half the season, but this year with Wendell, I think we're seeing some pretty good things. The first thing is the fact that the Bulls are just simply a better team with him than without him. And, I mean, on-off numbers can be tricky, depending on how much you really buy into them or not. But when a team is 10 games under 500 and you've got a guy who's still a positive, granted it's not as high in the last 10 games or so as it is compared to the whole season for Wendell. But even so, I think that's pretty good. I mean, they're a positive with him, they're a negative without him. He's playing in various lineups, some with Levine and some without. Granted, he plays much more with Levine, but that's fine. So, what's all this mean for Wendell? I also want to point out the Bulls are a much better rebounding team when he's in the game as opposed to when he isn't. And the Bulls are the 6th best defense in the league. Now, I don't know how much of that is just random things like them forcing an amount of steals that is not sustainable. I also don't know how much of that is simply just Wendell and Chris Dunn being really good defensively, because Dunn's actually been kind of wild. But nonetheless, they are, and I think Wendell's a big reason for that. And it's not for anything that's super exciting, it's just the boring, fundamental defense stuff, whether it's covering a decent amount of ground or staying in front of people on screens and just not doing anything glaringly bad, which, again, is not exactly the most exciting defensive thing. He's not switching across every position. He's not blocking a million shots. He's not even averaging 1 steal a game, but he's just sound defensively, which that's still pretty damn good. I mean, he did gain comparisons to Horford going into this thing, and I do get a bit of Al Horford-ness with his defense, which is yeah, he's not reinventing the wheel defensively, but he's just simply playing defense better than your average big man, and that does go a long way. Now, Wendell has had foul trouble throughout the season. You could argue it's been ticky-tack fouls that could have gone either way, and referees just are going to call that on a young player more than they would a veteran. But even so, that's something he probably has to clean up, and you could argue he already kind of has. I mean, there were a decent amount of games early in the season he was getting 5-6 fouls, whereas, his last decent amount of games, his last 7 or 8 games, he hasn't passed 4 fouls. So you could already view that as progress. Now, this is going to be a theme with Wendell. I'll get to it a little bit more when I'm talking about his offense, but I do wish he would get a little more mean sometimes, because it does seem like there are times, and I think we saw this a little bit last night when he was matched up with Enes Kanter, where he maybe respects the guy he's going against a little too much, or he's simply not big enough to deal with him every possession. I mean, his wingspan is really good, Wendell, but he's 6'9", and while he's in good shape and he's a strong dude, I think there's room for him to potentially get a little stronger. But I do think that'll come with time. I don't think he's going to be a pushover. I don't think he's a pushover now. I don't think he's a physically imposing center, but I could see him getting to that point in time anyway. Now, even with all this being said, again, he's still a positive defensively, and he is grabbing 10 boards a game, 3.5 offensive a game, so that is still good. He's not like Tyler Zeller out there, I guess we could talk about his offense a little bit now, because the defense, I think it's good, and I think there's a lot of room for him to still get better defensively, which was kind of the reputation for him going into this. So offensively, he's really good at finishing around the rim, which is nice. 72% at the basket it's all coming from the stuff you expect it to be coming from, rolling to the rim, catching lobs, and just kind of standing around the basket in the right spot to get the ball from the perimeter player. Of course, if this team had more guys who could force attention from the defense, that'd be nice, but it's basically just LaVine because Otto hasn't played, and he was showing some ball handling stuff when he did play for them, at least last season. Markkanen has been one of the most disappointing players in the league, even if it's been a little better lately. So it's mainly just LaVine who can really force the defense to commit to him and allow Wendell to play off of that. But even so, Wendell has still gotten some lobs from Satoransky and whoever else, and he's okay enough at just standing in the right spot, which sounds easy enough, but there are some centers who are not very good at that, whether it's they never roll or they roll too late or they stand in the wrong spot, whatever it may be. Again, Wendell he's a really smart player. Other things on offense, he has taken quite a few floaters this year. About 21% of his shots have been from floater range. They're not going in, they're at 28%, but I like the fact that he's shooting those. I mean, if you're going to be a guy who can roll to the rim, but you can also shoot a floater if the big man rolls, rotates back over to you, and you can make those at a decent clip, then that's a solid enough offensive foundation as a big man, So hopefully those can go in for him. He was better on them last year. He did shoot about 42%, so I'd like to think that he's just missing a few more than he'll end up missing long term. His jumper, his form looks solid. The percentages are not very good right now. Well, from 10 to 16 feet, he's shooting 52%, which is okay. Well, I should say it's more than okay. It's great. It's just, for him to really be effective with that, it's probably going to have to be more three-pointers because, modern NBA and stuff. But I guess we can be a little intrigued that his mid-rangers have been okay. That being said, I do feel like there's a little bit of a mandate from Boylen, maybe, where it's like, hey, Wendell, don't shoot mid-rangers, because Wendell does get a few opportunities to take them, and he never totally does. And this is something I was saying earlier with Wendell's potential lack of aggressiveness. He might have to get a little more selfish with his shot. Not a crazy amount, not hijacking the offense or anything, but I feel like there are more opportunities for him to just simply shoot the ball, just kind of in general, whether it's having an opportunity for a shot or maybe being able to go off the dribble a little bit. Just random things within the flow of the game where I feel like Wendell might be able to shoot or even just draw contact a little bit more. He's only attempting 3 free throws a game. This Bulls offense might need it because LaVine is having to shoulder quite a bit right now. And that is something that could be a thing with Wendell, is maybe he's a little too unselfish. I do think he can end up being a good passer. His passing numbers up to this point are not very good, but when I actually watch him out there and I watch him involved in random handoff plays that aren't going to lead to assists or anything, but you just kind of watch it all happen, I'm just like, okay, I feel like that could be a thing for him, but we might be a few years out on that type of a thing. So I think that's what I got on Wendell. I think defensively he's good kind of all around with potential to be great, even if it's never going to be that flashy. I think on offense, it's got to be the floater and his jumper, just kind of in general. I mean, his long twos are bad, his threes are bad right now. But again, he's barely shooting them, so he might be a lot better at them than he's been able to actually show off. I wouldn't be surprised if he was taking, let's say, 1.5 to 2 threes a game, that his percentages went up because it just became more of a regular thing for him. And maybe that's on Boylen, maybe that isn't. Because I feel like that's kind of got to be Wendell's path to being a really effective offensive player. It's either being a floor spacer or being dominant around the basket with finishing and post moves and that type of thing. And I don't know. I mean, if he's not going to be great at either one of those two things, then he can still be pretty damn good, but there will be more of a limitation on his offensive value. So we'll see with all that. But I do like him. I do like Wendell. I've used the Horford comparison with him, and I think that's looking solid 30 games into his second year. Although he does project to be a better rebounder than Horford, so that's cool.